Ow! Greetings, programs. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and you're watching another Tron Uprising review. Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, bringing you another Tron Uprising review. So, in order to catch up with everything, because I've been dragging my feet, I'm going to go ahead and do a twofer. So we're going to be doing 2 episodes today. The episode 8, The Reward, and episode 9, part 1 of Scars. And this I'm really waiting to get to, because I mean, when the series went on that little brief hiatus, they showed like a small preview of what Scars was going to be about, and it answered some questions, and I was just like, oh man, I can't wait to see this. As I've told y'all from the very beginning, I'm a huge Tron fan, so I try to keep on, in step with all the Tron news. I go to tron-sector.com. I'll leave a link down in the doobly-doo for those of y'all who are interested. It's pretty much a website that's all things Tron. It's probably the closest thing to an official Tron website that's out there. So, anyway, since we've got a lot to say, I'm going to go ahead and get on with this. So, the episode 8, The Reward, what happens is... Okay, before I even begin about episode 8, I have to say, this was probably the only episode in the entire series that I guess I just didn't particularly like. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I mean, every episode has kept a very good standard of art style and acting and everything like that. This one kind of rubbed me the wrong way because, well, to me the characters were doing a few things, well, I guess out of character, and there was a plot hole or two there. So let me tell you what happens. Basically, Tesla's trying to find a new angle to get the people of Argo City to turn in the Renegade, and offers them pretty much a prize. First of all, he cancels the curfew that the people of Argon are. I want to say Argo City, Argon. Please excuse me. The people of Argon are under a curfew. He lifts it. This has happened since the very beginning of the series. Secondly, he has the whole population of the city go to the big arena where they hold the games, and tells them, the person who turns in the Renegade wins this beautiful car. It's like the Price is Right of Doom. Okay, I know that, throughout history, yeah, we've had evil dictators who gave people incentives to turn in various dissidents, but also history shows that brings out the worst in everyone, because if it's a lucrative enough prize, you're going to turn a person in just to get the prize, and pretty much that's what happens. All over Argon, the programs are turning in other programs. Oh, he's the Renegade. No, he's the Renegade. He's the Renegade. I mean, it's just madness. And of course, Mara and Zed are both, kind of seeing this, and even Paige, is looking at this, saying, what gives? What happens is they have this one really inane program who's like sitting there drooling over the car, and of course Pavel, little rat weasel, basically tells him, hey, I can get you that car. All we've got to do is just give a good enough scapegoat. And so they get I forget the name of that program. It's one of the jerk programs that's been getting on Zed's nerves. So they get his disc and have it reprogrammed to make it look like he's the Renegade, and so General Tesla sentences him to death. But then Paige comes in along with Mara and Zed, both saying he's been set up, he's not the one. General Tesla, by this point, is so unbelievably pissed that he doesn't care. So what he does, well, it's because you seem to want to defend him so bad, you get to join him. And he puts them all on basically this really sick version of the rack, where they're all tied to a post and they have other guard programs on light cycles on the other end where their arms are chained, slowly stretching them. And he does it really publicly. And of course, Beck has to go in and rescue his friends. And even though the funny thing is, he uses that program's car that he won to get to the arena in time to do it, which was a pretty sweet little bit of revenge, for him being such a jerk. That's even worse than just a jerk. That's just the only word that comes to mind for some strange reason. I'm losing my vocabulary, people. Anyway, everything gets neatly wrapped in. Well, Paige, when they're being stretched to death, Paige just is on the verge of telling Zed that probably she likes him, maybe, and of course it's one of those cheesy moments where he almost said and then something happens to stop it. So, again, this episode, well, like I said, you got Tesla doing something that was just too... It's like one of the most common tropes for villains in any kind of show. And I know that Tron Uprising is a kid's show. It's aimed at a younger audience. But thus far, the storylines have been sophisticating and not insulting to our intelligence, so that a wide range can watch it and enjoy it. Nowadays, people know that animation is not just a kid's thing. I grew up in the 80s, in a time where most cartoons were just, plugs to, just basically half-hour-long commercials to buy toys. And they were just given a cursory plot, really simplistic stuff. Still, of course, found a way into our hearts. But nowadays, because of cartoons from the 80s, and they sort of gained sophistication over a period of time, you have more than just more than just kids who watch this. And so when you make an animated show, especially one that's going to appeal to a broader audience, and well, it's Disney. Disney's usually better at that than this. You have Tesla doing something that is just way too much like Snidely Whiplash. It's never a good idea to get on Tesla's bad side. And he's thus far been a fairly decent villain, but to just round them all up and say, I'm going to kill you all, and not even really hear anyone out. Well, there was an episode where he wanted to just de-res Beck in that other program in that disc game, and instead dang it, what's her name? Paige talked him into letting one free and killing the other. That way the people would see him as a merciful leader. So I guess you could say that General Tesla was always, this person just used to getting his way no matter what the cost. So in the end of the day, he, the kind of person you just don't want to cross. I've known people like that in my life. Had a boss like that, If he tells you to jump, the only question he wants to hear out of your mouth is how high. And I'm dead serious. This kind of guy was like that. I didn't think people like that existed in this world, except maybe in the military. Well, of course, Tesla's military. But anyway, so you have Tesla doing something that even I didn't expect him to do. You have overused tropes. Pavel doing something just even stupid even for him, but then Pavel isn't the smartest person in the world. Pavel is like the Starscream to General Tesla's Megatron. Okay, those of you who grew up in my generation know what I'm talking about. If not, Well, actually, they have the new Transformers series. They kind of play off on that anyway. But if you don't understand, just ask somebody who's in their mid 20s to early to mid 30s or late 30s. They'll understand. But anyway, like I said, this episode, despite having really good visuals as always and having a very fast-paced plot, just kind of fell flat on story. I mean, with this one, I really have to kind of give it I'll give it a point for effort. 6 out of 10. It wasn't bad. It wasn't terrible. It just wasn't as good. You know, I was kind of taken aback. And I think perhaps that this might have just been sort of a throwaway episode before they brought in the whole deal with the next episode, which is Scars. Wow. Those of you who have been keeping up with Tron Uprising very closely, you know how before the hiatus began, they showed that little snippet of what Scars was like. And I don't know how well distributed that was, or if it was just on Disney XD or just distributed over the internet. I learned about it through Tron Sector. I pretty much get all my Tron news through them. And it was just showing bits and pieces, and one thing that really caught my eye was that it seemed to tell the story about what happened in that crucial moment in Tron Legacy, where they had the flashback with how Clue took over the system. And it looked like he had killed Tron. Now, of course, and this is spoilers, but I don't care because this movie's been out for about 2 years. You find out Tron didn't die. Somehow Clue reprogrammed him into Rinsler. And of course, we know, looking at Tron Uprising, which is sort of a series that takes place in between the original movie and Tron Legacy, Tron was not turned into Rinsler right then and there. Something happened before that point. Well, Scars does some answering of questions, at least in this part. Part 1 was chock-a-block full of flashbacks. So, to begin with, we have this program coming into Argon, and it gets like a free pass through the outer perimeter. All these readouts light up, priority, cargo access denied, classified. And Tron, who's been keeping a close watch on the enemy that's been going in and out of the city, his arrival trips a specialized alarm specifically tailored to him. It shows up in red letters on the screen in his hideout as as Dyson. And then Tron he gets furious. You see the scars actually growing, and that's one interesting thing about this episode. You see Tron in his interactions with Beck. The scars are continuously growing on him. It seems to have some strange connection to his emotional state, which causes his body to further deteriorate. You see, from previous episodes, we know that Tron was grievously injured and was never able to fully recover. He has a healing chamber in the hideout that keeps the scars from taking over his body. So anyway, once Dyson arrives, he tells he basically starts putting Beck through really harsh training, because he tells Beck that Dyson is basically second in command to Clue. So though General Tesla was no pushover, going against Dyson would be almost certain death sentence. And it's just something that's constantly bothering Tron, and of course Beck can see it more and more, and then we get a good look at what it is through all the flashbacks. At first, they show the system before, of course, Clue's big takeover, when the ISOs were still around. They show all this civil unrest because they have a lot of programs who just are terrified of the ISOs. Now, for those of you who did not see the movie, ISOs were basically programs that wrote themselves. They just suddenly appeared one day coming out of the sea of simulation. In the movie, Flynn was fascinated by them and believed them to be a miracle, and he wanted to understand them and know, where they came from, what their purpose was. The other programs, because they were never written, were suspicious and even terrified of them. And of course, Clue, who Flynn wrote to basically create the perfect system, he saw them as imperfection and something that needed to be destroyed. But he harbored those feelings in secret until he grew a big enough power base, because Flynn couldn't stay in the computer world all the time. He had to go back to the real world because he had a family and had a life. Never knew just how much of a power base Clue had grown until it was too late, and then Clue staged a hostile takeover, cutting off Flynn's access back to the real world and keeping him trapped in the computer world for about over 20 years. So these flashbacks basically show sort of the sequence of events that were brought them up to the hostile takeover. Dyson was actually one of the programs that worked under Tron when he was chief of security, and during a riot, Dyson's face was badly damaged by a disc that just suddenly came out of nowhere. And so you saw Dyson's face, like it was like a huge hole in the middle of his his head, going all the way down to his right eye, and just showing his inside EQB parts. And later on, another flashback shows that when Flynn was being escorted to safety, and the big reveal of Clue's betrayal happened, you found out that Dyson was the one who betrayed Flynn and got Tron into that mess. And he comes up to Tron, and you see his face is completely healed because Clue managed, I guess, to repair his code or something like that. Clue, of course, being a copy of Flynn, had the same computer privileges that Flynn had, because he was pretty much the system administration, while Flynn was gone in the real world. So, and so you see these two flashbacks, through Tron's eyes and Dyson's eyes. Dyson comes to Argonne to do what he believes is just routine inspections, and he's like this really dark person. I mean, every word that comes out of his mouth just sends a chill down your back, even though he really hasn't said much. And also, he seems to be just nothing you want to mess with. Whatever whatever kind of authority that Clue gave him, it seems to give him some seriously specialized privileges. There's this one scene where Beck is waiting above the sign to Argonne, and Dyson is walking with Pavel and Paige, and then he suddenly stops them. Where he not too far up ahead, he doesn't see it, but of course the audience is given a chance to see a little one of those little bomb things that he has attached to the side, and Dyson reaches down, touches the ground, and footprints appear in the floor, leading up to like I guess a sewage drain or something like that, or a service hatch. And so he reaches over the side, grabs the device, and throws it in the air, and it explodes in smoke. And he's like, well, it was just a typical smoke bomb, but somebody wanted to reduce our visibility. And I'm like, how did he do that? Then and then that was when I realized he probably has specialized privileges that even the other military and guard programs don't have, which I thought was a really nice touch. Now, throughout this entire time, Tron is just becoming more and more of a taskmaster to Beck, especially since Dyson's come. He's putting him through harsher training, but he's never really telling Beck anything. And Beck is at that point where he uncovers that bomb. Beck is up on top of that sign. No one can see him, but he overhears Pavel and Mara and Dyson talking, and he said, "Well, he's no Tron." And he said, "Well, yeah." He said, "But they say that Tron is dead." And of course, Dyson says, "Well, yeah, he is dead. I watched him die." And that's where they have that big flashback with the moment after Clue. It looks like Clue's going to kill Tron, but all he did was just seem to rip into his chest a lot with that disc. he's like damaged and has these massive scars. Looks like a several saw blades cut into him. You see all the inside EQB parts again all over the place after that big fight when Flynn makes his escape. And that's where where they show that Dyson was working with Clue to turn the guards and the security forces against Tron. But they still have not yet shown everything, because there's something that must have happened even at that point, that Tron must have made his escape even though he must have been badly injured. So I'm hoping that in the next part, this part basically ends on a cliffhanger. I'll tell you about it in a second. But I'm hoping that the next part actually explains a little bit more about it. See, what happens is when Beck overhears this conversation, he goes back to Tron, and he's trying to force, Tron to tell him what's going on, but Tron's just adamant. He's like, I don't need to tell you anything, and he says, and then of course Beck goes up to him and grabs him. He's like, I'm not letting you go till you give me some answers. No, he said, I'm not letting you go. And then Tron uses one of those little things again. It's like an electrical charge. It zaps Beck back and knocks him to the ground half conscious. And then Tron takes Beck's disc, disconnects the part of it that gives him, I guess, the Tron programming and the abilities and skills, and he puts it on himself, and his scars actually start to spread again over his face, while his suit turns white like Beck's, and he just looks at Beck and says, "I didn't ask you," and that's how the episode ends. A big to be continued cliffhanger. So, wow, that one was a big apology for the previous episode. Well worth waiting for. Even though it was told mostly in flashbacks, it gives a lot of information that was left out from the movie. And I think this is what the fans were really waiting and hoping for. I mean, we already saw that in this particular in-between thing, Tron is definitely alive, and he hasn't been turned into Rinsler yet. And so we're sitting there wondering what gives. So this is giving us part of the story bit by bit. No pun intended. So I can't wait to see what more there is going to be told about this. So story-wise, whoa, that one of the best yet. Of course, animation's always top-notch. They have this, like I said, I think I told y'all this before, but the animators seem to have this penchant for doing weird wide-angle views of the characters' faces. They do it a lot. They did it a lot with Pavel, and now they're doing it with Dyson. Makes it look like his head is like shaped like a light bulb. I just thought that was just kind of weird, but it's not. It doesn't take away from the aesthetic. That kind of wide-angle view, when used properly, can give some really interesting dramatic looks, or what would be the word I'm looking for? It can give an interesting feel to a moment, be it dramatic or just one of those, just to convey a stressful moment or something like that. They just have a tendency, I think, to overuse it a bit. But otherwise, this episode, solid 9 out of 10. Great episode. Can't wait to see what happens after this. So, I think that's it for now. I've finally caught up with the episodes. Yay me. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section. As always, keep it civil. As always in my stuff, keep it civil. And so, I will meet you again next time with the next episode. And until then, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Stay lucky and stay blessed.